Thank you for checking out the third episode of the What is Cycling podcast. On today's episode, we have Matt McDougall. Matt has not only worked in the biking industry for years, he's an avid adventurer, a local legend, and an amazing chef. On today's episode, we will be discussing all about bikepacking, our trip to Pisgah, and what went wrong. Check it out. But thanks for checking out the What is Cycling podcast. Today we have Matt McDougall with us. So, hey Matt, how's it going today?
Good, Elijah. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to have you on. I haven't seen your face in a while since moving across the country. From being in the same town to being across the country, it's been hard.
Yeah, it's a little bittersweet, man. I miss you a lot.
Yeah, same here. But why don't you tell the listeners about yourself?
All right, so I've been involved with bikes pretty much my whole life, but when I moved to North Carolina about 10 years ago, I kind of started picking it up with some more frequency and doing more rides and events and getting into more groups and into the community, if you will. For the past 5 years, I actually have been working in bike shops and been able to really be instrumental in seeing people develop within the craft and the sport, which has been really fulfilling for me. I've also had an opportunity to take my cycling to the next level as well with rides that you and I have done. We did our century rides. We've done these long, epic greenway exploration things, and our most notable one was probably our bikepacking trip that we did last year, which was actually kind of a progression of bikepacking because I've done a few like real local trips and real chill ones, but with you, that was kind of where we really took it to the next level by going like into Pisgah National Forest. And
We definitely branched out.
yeah,
That was my first trip, and it was amazing.
definitely like out of my comfort zone for sure. And it was lessons were learned, at least.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
Because I was like, I've read so much about bikepacking. I was like, I just want to do it. I don't know what it is. I want to do it. I want to experience it. And then we did it. And then that's anytime I daydream, I feel like that's all I think about.
Yeah,
It's just
just
getting
like
out there and
planning the
adventuring.
route. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, where are we going? What's it gonna look like? And
Yeah.
I think the thing about bikepacking is like part of it is you do just have to just dive in, but I think you also have to kind of have a bit of a plan, because it's a very real like aspect um, of the sport, or just like you're out in nature, you're on your bike, it's physically demanding, you have to plan for it, you have to expect the unexpected. You see one of everything on the trip, even if it's a simple overnighter. Like there's just a lot of stuff that you kind of have to be prepared for.
And it's probably not going to go your way. We'll get into that in a little bit, but it
Yeah,
will
we will.
definitely not go your way.
Yeah, we got stories for that.
Yeah. So exciting.
Yeah, but that's me, man.
And that's another thing about you too, is that you are such a huge component in the cycling community in Raleigh. You're definitely like, from you being in the bike shop, you've got to meet so many people. And anytime I ride with you, there's like probably 15 to 30 people we will pass, and you'll know just about 90% of them.
It's been really cool to experience riding local trails, and like it doesn't matter if I'm out like gravel or greenway or road or solo, like I just get to see like people out and about. But then also like because I work at the shop, I get the opportunity of like following people on Strava and other platforms and just seeing like what people are up to, and it's really cool just to see like how vibrant the Raleigh area is for cycling. I mean, because like locally, we have a ton of rides. I mean, whatever your discipline is, it's here, and whatever level of that discipline, it's here. But then people from Raleigh are going out and they're like winning, the buck 50 or the gravel XL, or like going out to Pisgah or Uwharrie or something like that. So like Raleigh shows up like all over the place. It's pretty neat.
Definitely.
It's pretty awesome.
And that's how we met. We actually met through the bike shop because I kept bringing my bike in. And then I was like, dude, we need to go on a ride. And so we finally synced up, went for a ride. And then it was like instant connection. And now we can't shake each other.
Yeah, for real, man. Also, Taylor called me a while back and ordered some shoes for you on the down
Oh
low,
yeah, for
and
my birthday. Yeah,
yeah, so that's um, how I got involved with the whole fam. And then we also have
yeah, for
huskies
real.
too. So I mean, you know,
Oh yeah, we do have the husky connection,
yeah.
Sora and Nala. And so, how do you think being in the cycling industry has maybe not affected, but changed how you view the cycling world? Because you get both parts. Like you're an avid cyclist, but also you kind of deal with the big corporations, working at Trek and all this stuff. Has How does that affect how you go about working in the cycling world?
Yeah, man, there's levels to that for sure because I think the sport of cycling is really beautiful and that like you get to learn a lot about yourself on and off the bike. You know, it's relevant to you and not a lot of other people would understand and appreciate it and stuff. So like those little things that you learn on the bike that help you off the bike, um, that has helped me in the shop as well because I get to see a whole variety of different people in their respective journey on the bike and how they interact with the bike. It's all different, you know. It's just like food. It's a tool, and the bike is a means of community and a way to meet people, a way to build a community, a way to best yourself, a way to train. Um, and you know, it's there's a lot of responsibility that comes with it as well because the bike industry over the past couple years, um, there's been a bit of a movement inside of it to be more inclusive space, like many places in our world right now. And you know, I realize that I have an opportunity to be instrumental in making an encouraging and safe spot for people to like see the potential of what they can do with the sport and like unleash that within themselves. You know, so a lot of times I'm just like guiding people in their journey. These are not interactions that I take lightly. It's not just a transaction that I see is just like a real opportunity to connect with people. Like even if they're not from Raleigh and they're not going to buy anything, I want to just get to know them, just show them a good time, maybe show
That's what I like about cycling too. I
yeah,
just love being able to hear everyone's stories. Like everyone brings something to the table,
right.
and we all like if you're into cycling and you're in the cycling world, you might just think of it as riding a bike, but you're giving something back to the cycling community.
Totally, yeah. And it's cool thing is everyone's at a different place, and it's important to recognize that. But you know, once you understand it yourself, I think you know that, like as you know, the reason why you're doing this podcast and this platform is because you know that cycling is a gift, and it really is a tool, man. And it's important that we're like, you know, treating it with the responsibility and um, you know the integrity that we know we need to.
Exactly. And that's why I hate like cyclists get a bad rep for the stingy, stuck up cyclist. But really, like, I mean, as me and you both know, like cycling should be an all inclusive, fun community. And it doesn't have to be like, no, to be a cyclist, you don't have to wear spandex and you don't have to join a team and you don't have to go get KOMs on Strava and you don't have to do road races and all that. It can literally be I use it to commute. I like fixies. I do want to do ultra distance. Like whatever brings you to cycling, that's what it is to you.
Right.
And that's the beauty about cycling. And that's why like I like encouraging people through Strava. And I hate when people are like, "Oh yeah, but I don't ride as much as you." I'm like, "You don't have to.
Yeah, it's all
It's
good.
whatever you want to do." And I'm happy that you're out there just enjoying nature. Like that's all it is.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's changed a lot over the past couple of years as well. And the coolest things that I've seen is, you know, folks that have come into the shop a couple years ago, they buy their first road bike, and now 2 years later, they're like, leading groups, like massive groups on weekly rides, big events,
Oh, that's cool.
and they're just they're crushing it. It's awesome. It's really encouraging to see how people progress, and that's the cool thing about cycling is every ride, every rider, everybody's goals, everybody's you know what gets them going. It's all different.
Yeah, and you can definitely catch the cycling bug. I caught the cycling bug. I Once I got my first drop bar bike and it was a gravel bike, the wheels just blew off and then I was like, "All right, game on. Let's see what we can do."
Yeah,
And then it's just I haven't turned back since.
yeah. I used to spend a lot of time riding in cities. I lived in Boston for a while, and I also lived in Savannah for a while too. And I didn't have a car during those times, so I rode a lot like around downtown and stuff, and it's really really fun to do that. I think I look back
Get
on
those
it. I
hotlines.
look back on it now, and I think it might have been a little reckless, but but that also just makes me a good advocate for safety. Like I can speak from experiences and stuff. Uh,
Yeah, like watching those guys do hotlines on YouTube with
uh,
like on a
I'm
fixed
not
city with
that
no
crazy,
helmet in New
man.
York City. Yeah, that's just
But also
it's amazing but madness.
working at the shop though, and just being like in the community, there's a lot of stories that people share, and you hear a lot, and it makes you kind of pay attention to, you know, the importance of things that are related to safety, and making sure that you have a good time out there and you do best yourself. And yes, going fast is fun, but you're doing it in a responsible way because people are watching cyclists. When you're on a greenway, other path users are motorists, drivers are watching us, and other cyclists are watching as well. So it's important to be mindful of that perception that's out there right now.
Yeah, I think cyclists view other cyclists as that person, but if you're a non-cyclist and you see a cyclist, we're all in the same category. So like if you do something like a bonehead move, they just classify it as all cyclists are like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I do want to talk about that one moment though, as we were going down Hillsboro, and I texted you about this last week. I think it was last week or maybe earlier this week,
Yeah,
but we had just done the Lucky 100, which if you're in Raleigh and the Triangle, you know that Oak City Cycling, they do a bunch of challenges on their website. Then you can do the challenge and go into the bike shop and they'll give you a patch. Well, we did the Lucky 100. We had already done like 100 miles and we were going back to Matt's house and we were doing a hotline down Hillsboro. And this car was about to pull out in front of Matt. And Matt locked up the brakes and skidded, but didn't lay his bike down. And it was the most majestic,
I would
amazing
throw
thing
some
I've ever
camera on
seen.
me because I mean it felt cool.
Oh, dude, it was
Yeah,
amazing. I mean, it was a pretty decent skid too. And we were both just like yelling at each other, like, "Did you see that? That was
that was
amazing!"
so cool.
Like, yeah, it was awesome.
Well, she didn't think that. That I can guarantee that. And she was probably
Yeah.
like these cyclists on Hillsboro, man.
Well, she doesn't have good taste.
Yeah.
All right. So the main point for this episode of the podcast is we're going to talk about our bike packing trip that we did into Pisgah. And we've just recently talked about it a few times, but so let's get into bike packing and explain to the listeners what bike packing is because I feel like it's really blown up in the past few years, especially with the pandemic. Since everyone's getting outside, bike packing, you can look at search trends and stuff, and it's just gone through the roof. So,
Yeah.
what is bike packing?
Yeah, it's wild, man. Like, everyone needed something to do in the pandemic, and there it was, the bike right in front of you the whole time. But with the advent of the gravel bike, coming onto the scene in such a big way, um, allowing people to go into more like I call mixed terrain, spots. Like you can now take a bike to road to greenway to gravel to trail. With the gravel bikes having wider tires, and now they're able to carry more stuff as well. That plus people are making bags that just accommodate literally any like frame dimensions that you could possibly think of. So bike packing has just been, perfectly suited for just um, our time right now. And what a time to be alive, as they say. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
so a lot of, I mean, bike packing is basically touring, you know, but with all of that stuff that I just mentioned, you're basically able to take the aspects of, through hiking a stretch of trail like the AT, and you're basically able to load your bike up and, you know, go into some really remote areas. And bike packing, in my opinion, is a really it is the most like real thing you can do on a bike, because once you set out on a trip, I mean, it's very absolute, you know.
Yeah, it's very real.
Yeah,
It was just so amazing because like I was saying earlier, like that was the first experience I had with bikepacking. And now I get on bikepacking.com and that's all I look at is like what routes are near me? What overnight trips can I do?
yeah,
Just because it gets you like it combines camping, which is something I love, being out in nature with the bike. And I mean, I don't even think it has to be like people think of bike packing as like loading it down, putting a bivy on it, and everything like that, and going out and sleeping in the woods. I mean, I guess bike packing doesn't exactly have to be like that. It could just be packing your bike down to go make coffee in the park. Like you can make bike packing whatever you want to
you
do.
really can. I mean, bike packing, I think, is just the term that's been just like put onto it over the past, but like bike packing's been around for forever. It's just more accessible now because, like I said, there's better bikes for it. There's better gear to put on the bikes now with things like Airbnb and Hip Camp, and with just heat maps and a little bit more know-how of like trails and stuff like that, like, and with forums, you can really figure stuff out and you can have a really good time. I mean, our bikepacking trip that we're going to talk about, we've never been to that area before, but we had a lot of peace of mind going into it because we did research and we planned it. And that's honestly part of the fun. I mean, I love making bike routes for riding around Raleigh, but like, that is, you take all that stuff that you love about your local trails and then you can just apply it to a place like you've never been. And I love maps, I love gear, I love, something to train for. Obviously, when you go to Pisgah, there's a ton of elevation as well, so it gives you something to put on your calendar to like go for as well. And I think as a cyclist, like, that's what you need. You want something like once a month or a quarter or half a year that like will be a goal, whether it's a race or a charity ride or an event like this, a self-proclaimed event like this. Um,
Yeah,
so the
absolutely. And that
planning
was a
for,
good thing too.
yeah, the planning for it's just really fun too, man. I mean, we had a blast just like being like, dude, I just picked up this item. Like, I can't wait to like see it
Yeah,
for a
we were messaging each other back and forth
test
like, "Dude, they
run.
have a good deal on this." Yeah, Amazon, go get it.
Yeah,
And I was like, I guess I lucked out in the deal because you like maps and planning so much because I looked at the route a few times, but I wasn't like as honed in as you were on the forums and stuff because you were like, okay, well, if this is closed, we can go to this place. And people said that this is washed out, so let's go here because a few times, like, I don't think the route went our way. Like, I remember us coming to a fork and we could have gone down this one road or taken a longer route to get back to the parking lot or something.
oh yeah, yeah, and that's the other thing too is like when you're out in Pisgah, like, man, a wrong turn can be really detrimental because you're either going to go down or up or around, and you're going to add elevation or miles that are unnecessary. And like Pisgah is a
Or maybe
place.
lose cell service.
Oh yeah, exactly. And yeah, that's what I'm saying about Pisgah is like Pisgah's real deal. Like, there's no cell service. Like, the weather turns like really quickly. I mean, people get hurt out there if they're not planning it correctly. So, if I may, the one thing that gave me a little bit of peace of mind about this trip was, one, I was riding with you, and you're like an outdoors person. So I know that we have, between the two of us, we have some, you know, competent survival skills, especially if we know where we're at. But two,
Knock on wood.
I did, yeah, right, on paper. I did a couple of like bike packing trips a couple years before, basically one or two a year leading up to this, and those were local in the area. I did a trip from Raleigh to Eno State Park out in Northwest Durham, and that was with a buddy of mine, Nate, just to see if we could just survive. And well,
And how long was that trip, mileage wise?
that was an overnight. Total mileage was 80. We did 50 ish on the first day. Most of it was on the East Coast Greenway. So we went through Umstead and then looped down. It's basically like the Lucky 100. We looped down through Bond
I
Park
mean,
and
that's some
Cary.
serious riding,
And then
especially with the packed down
yeah,
bike.
we took American Tobacco Trail up to downtown Durham. Then we got some lunch, and then we did like the rest, like 10 miles out to Eno. And that was a great way to start because I mean, one, I was on a different bike. I had I didn't carry much stuff actually. I think I had a Camelback, and I bungee corded a duffel bag to a back rack that I installed on it. So it was very it definitely wasn't like the pro setups that you see on like Radvist or bikepacking.com or anything like that. This was real grassroots, people.
Yeah, but
um
if you want to do it, you can find a
well,
way.
yeah, it's just like let's just go test the waters. Just make sure like we don't die, and if things get squirrely, like we're still in cell service, and we can phone it in if we really need to. And
Yeah, we'll get picked up in an hour, so
yeah,
no big deal.
and we learned a lot of lessons on that trip, but that was a great place to do it. And then next year we went to Uwari, and that was a little bit more like off the grid. That one had some fun stuff happen as well, where the trail was supposed to be there and it wasn't there, and then and then this heat set in, and that was a
It gets real hot there
and
too.
then, but we also on that trip in Uari, we did not know where to get water. So I was like, keeping all these things that like went wrong in the past trips. I mean, this is a great way to learn. Is just learn from the mistakes that you learn. We failed pretty big on the previous trips, right? But I mean, I gotta this next line sponsored by bikepacking.com. I mean, they literally there's a whole section on each trail where they like tell you where to park, they tell you where you can get water, they tell you where you can camp, they tell you where you can get to a country store or a gas station. There's, all the logistics are handled for you for the most part. I mean, there's other stuff there, but there's also a GPX file that you can download and put onto your um, computer. So, like, those things right there, like, you have this, it's a very like overwhelming feeling of like, all right, we're going into Pisgah National Forest where it's real deal, no cell service, weather gets crazy quickly. But all those things that were challenging for us in previous trips, like those were already figured out. So that gave us a lot of peace of mind in going to this. And I felt really confident and comfortable going into it. Plus, I was since then been riding a lot more and was training for the kind of elevation that we were getting into because I was a bit more like understanding of what elevation profiles or route profiles look like. So I knew that like what day number one looked like. I think it was 15 miles and like 2,000 feet of climbing or something like that.
Yeah, it was quite a bit of elevation gain. I remember my legs were pretty tired that first day.
Right. But we were
And
prepared for. I mean, dude, you did it. You biked from Raleigh to Winston to. You did 2 days of
oh yeah, to
biking
Boone.
from
Yeah.
Raleigh there. So obviously, you had an excuse already lined up if you weren't feeling good. But you were a champ, dude.
Yeah, I so for the listeners, I biked from Raleigh all the way to Winston-Salem the first day, which was, and then I slept in my friend's yard, and that was like 134 miles, and then I biked up to Boone, which was like another 86 or something like that.
Yeah.
But then I had a rest day or two in between. I was going to bike all the way to meet you at the start of Yancey Ridge,
Yeah.
and my grandfather was like, "No, I just want to drive over there and see it." And I was like, "All right,
You
cool,
can't
take
say
me."
no to him,
But
dude.
yeah, exactly. He's a sweet old man.
Yeah.
So I was like, "All right, that sounds good." And then once like immediately you leave the parking lot and you start going up a gravel climb, and
Roseboro.
I
Was
think I
that
had,
Roseboro? Dang it.
I think so.
I'm gonna look it up.
And
I have the
so
route here. Oh,
immediately,
hold on. It was 10.97 miles with 2,000 feet of climbing.
yeah, that sounds about right.
Yes.
Because I just remember like I was like, I really have to slow down and pace myself because my legs are just burning.
Oh,
And especially, I think I had more on my bike once I met you because I was like, okay, we got to take food. I'm actually taking my bivy and sleeping gear. Like I had the full setup, but when I was biking across North Carolina, I had a minimalistic setup. So that was pretty interesting to see how that worked out too.
hmm, it was out.
Because most of the time I was on road, but then once I rode with you, we were switching to gravel.
Yep. We rode up Pineola Road.
Pineola. Okay.
Pineola. That was a real deal road right there.
Because I mean, pretty much it's just like you go on a few flats, a few little climbs, and then you hit that road, and it's pretty much straight up the mountain. And then that's what takes you into the place where you have to hike a bike into the campsites.
Yeah, that was Little Lost Coves where we ended up camping, and so like I think it was the last like 3/4 of a mile. Um, Actually, it was about yeah, 3/4. It was just hike a bike, and I mean, no one could bike up it anyways. It was just classic Pisgah route section. That was
Yeah,
pretty
roots and
steep.
everything.
But when we got to the top, I mean, that was incredible. It was great.
Oh yeah, it was worth the scenery. It was so beautiful.
Yeah, because it was the other side of Blue Ridge Parkway, where normally, like, if you're cruising along the parkway and they got the pull up, the spots to pull over, and there's the plaques, and it says like you looking out. Like we were camping
Oh
in
yeah, the
that
overlooks.
the other side of the valley.
Yeah, I can't remember what Brown Mountain Lights.
Oh yeah, the
Yeah,
infamous
yeah, yeah.
Brown Mountain Lights.
Yeah, so that was the mountain that we were on because there's the Brown Mountain overlook that was looking towards it, I think.
Yeah, and you could see out towards. We could see Grandfather Mountain and parts of the Blue Ridge Parkway, and
Yeah, I mean, you could see for miles. I mean, it was so gorgeous. You could see every which way. And I guess so. Okay, so we're kind of going into day one, but what else happened on day one? I remember we went to the country store, and I think he was the owner. That was a very fun and interesting interaction.
yeah, that place was a gem for sure, and that's featured on bikepacking.com. And a lot of people who have done this trip, they go out there and they they pay some homage to this place. Um, it's just a grocery and provision store, and I believe the guy gentleman's name is his name Greg.
I can't remember. That probably sounds right though. I just remember we went there and he was on the phone. We went inside, got some food and some snacks and stuff, just packed our
I
bike,
got a map
and then
from
we
him
came
too.
out. Yeah, in a map, and then we came out and he was off the phone and he was like, "I like you bikers." And we are like, "Okay."
Yeah.
And he was like, you guys like to keep nature clean or something like that, and you guys pick up after yourselves and you don't make a mess and stuff." And then we kept engaging in conversation and stuff, and I cannot remember what he said, but I started laughing, and I think you thought that he was serious, and I that was making me lose it more because we were like, "Who is this guy? We don't know him. We don't trust him."
Oh no,
And then
here's the man. It's funny because I met some people afterwards that they're like, "Oh, did you talk to that guy, man? He knows everybody. He knows every trail in the area." It's
yeah,
cool.
it was amazing, and he was talking about how people will pay him. They'll like just come up with $1,000 in cash and be like, "Hey, can I cook meth back here?" And he's like, "Get out of
Yeah,
here."
he went off into some stories too, man.
Yeah,
He's probably seen
yeah, that we have for
more than I
sure.
have in the shop. That's for sure.
Yeah, it was so funny. I mean, he was a gem. And then I remember he has a Jewish star out there because I think some white supremacists were wanting to have like a cross burning or something. And he's like, "This is like garlic to a
Yeah,
vampire."
he's
He was
like,
like, "It's
not on
amazing."
my watch. Man. He's the people's champion, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great. So if you're going to do the Yancey Ridge, I think it's the 420 ride on bikepacking.com, you have to go to the general store and make sure he'll even be like, if you guys need anything in the middle of the night, come to the back of the shop, even if it's at 2 o'clock in the morning. And he's like, I'll let you get whatever you need to.
Yeah.
Granted, I'm not getting off the mountain at 2 o'clock, but if you needed to in a life or death situation, I'm sure he'd let you in.
Well, we almost needed to because when we got to the top of Little Lost Coves, the rain came in really quickly, and we
It was probably within like 15 minutes of setting up camp.
yeah, I mean, we took off. We got to the top, and you could see the overlook and take in the scenery, and it was really cool. And then kind of turned around us, and it just looked like just you could see the sheets of rain just moving in. Um, I had the idea of setting up my tent and putting all my stuff inside to just keep take all the bags off the bike so that I'll just keep everything dry. I didn't have like super bomb proof like Ortlieb bags or anything. Man, that's when things got really bad for me.
Yeah, like I'll have to find the video, but it was insane. Like it sounded like a train was moving in because of how much it was raining. And then I had my tarp that I put under my bivy. I hadn't unloaded my no, I did. I set up my bivy and everything, but I took the tarp out from underneath it and I was sitting under it because it was just raining so much and everything was getting soaked. And so you were in your tent trying to stay dry, and there was a river of water just running around your tent.
Yeah,
And I mean,
uh,
everything was soaked.
totally. So that was, I mean, if I could have done it again, I just would have put a tarp over my bike, and then I just would have like stood under a tree or something because all right, I did a dry run of all of my stuff a week or two leading up before the trip. I loaded up my bike, I rode around with it, and to make sure that everything was, secure and worked well. I even set my tent up in my living room to make sure that, like, everything was good there, and then I had all the
I love
poles,
it.
everything was working. However, the one thing that I did not do was check the waterproofing on my tent. So my great idea of setting up the tent and putting some of the bags in for to keep them dry quickly turned bad because my tent was not waterproof because apparently they lose their waterproof over time. Oh, this was my dad's tent from, probably a 15-year-old tent. So,
Had it been waterproof, though, that would have been the right
I
idea.
mean, I guess, but I'll never know because my stuff
Yeah.
was soaked. So, I we spent the rest of the day just adjusting and dealing with that. And it got better, then it got bad, and then it got worse, and then it got better. But honestly, we didn't really end up going to bed until like probably like 3 in the morning because we had
Yeah,
to.
last time I looked at my watch, it was like 2:30.
Yeah. So I do recall like after it rained, we assessed everything, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is not good," because my stuff was soaked.
Yeah.
I was soaked. I mean, some stuff had like that was inside the bags were all right, but a lot of stuff was just really bad. So I remember there was a giant rock that kind of created this natural canopy, which actually had like a fire pit like underneath it, and
Yeah, someone had already stayed
someone had
there
already stayed there. And but we didn't find that until after the rain was like on its way
after
out.
the torrential
Because
downpour.
like we said, we got up there and then it started raining, and we had like 10 minutes, and we're like, oh man, let's just secure all the stuff.
I remember running back to you and I was like, we're about to get rained on in like 30 seconds. So if you can gather anything up and put it in a waterproof bag or whatever, you need to do that.
Like yesterday.
And then, like clockwork, it just started dumping.
Yeah, that's how. I mean, that just goes to show like how you know how quick the weather turns. Like when you're in that that place. Um,
Oh, yeah. And it's kind of
so
crazy too, just to see it coming at you.
yeah,
And it's like, is that a dense fog? And it's like, no. And then, like, why is it so loud? I'm like, crap, that's rain.
yeah, it was wild. So we moved camp. We got into this little natural like cave thing, or like the overhang rock that kind of was sheltering us, which was great. Um, but for the rest of the
Oh yeah,
night,
we hung up the dry
yeah,
line so we could hang our tents and stuff on it to
hung,
dry
hung
out.
up the dry lines. We then, like, the sun came out for a couple hours, typical North Carolina fashion, where like you'll get a after the severe rain, the sun will come out for a couple hours. I remember we like put stuff on the rock face as it was drying off, just to kind of like let it bake in the sun a little bit as we're like overlooking the gorge, and then we were
Then we
hanging
had a
things
ball
up.
and dinner.
Yep, we were trying to like light a fire. We were trying to dry out wood. Like it was just, I mean, the whole rest of the day, we were just adjusting and kind of just pivoting to just how soaked everything was. Um, Thankfully, like it worked pretty well, and we were able to dry off our sleeping mats. It wasn't super cold, um, but we did end up like going to bed at like midnight, and for some reason I brought a hammock with me, and I was like, man, I don't even know if I'm gonna need this. It's probably just gonna be extra weight. But I was like, man, maybe I do need it. But so my tent was actually still wet, but my hammock was dry. So I set the hammock up at like 11 o'clock, 10 p.m., 11 midnight, whatever time. I don't know. It's hard to tell like what time it was. I'm
Yeah,
calling it. Um,
it's either sun up or sundown
for real.
in the woods.
And yeah, I mean, we were just behind because like we were not. It was not as chill as we wanted it to be. So I set the hammock up and I put a tarp over me because there was still some like light like mist coming in. But I was like, you know what, I can deal with this. I'm warm. I'm good. Um, but then uh, like
Oh yeah, we set it up and it was on moss, and the moss kept dripping because
yeah,
moss collects water, and so it just kept running down the hammock, and it just filled the hammock with water, which was
yeah.
the craziest thing.
So yeah, one of the sides of the hammock was touching just enough moss or the rock that it was leaning on, and it just kept sipping water from the side of the rock or the moss or whatever. I didn't even notice because it was dark. And I woke up uh like an hour after like trying to sleep, and my back was really cold, and I was like, well, that's just because I'm suspended in the air. It's like I'm in a blast chiller. Um, but then I
Oh
like
yeah, there's nothing underneath you to keep you
Yeah,
warm.
so
Yeah,
I was
hammocks
like,
are
"That's
good for
normal,
that.
totally good." But then I got up and I shined a light, and there was like just like an inch of standing water like at the bottom of the hammock, and that was rough, man. That was demoralizing because it was really late, and our fire was just basically smoldering because everything was damp. Like I didn't know. And then I remember, I tried to like dry off, like change clothes, try it again, or move the tent or hammock, try it again. And then, man, I think that's when like the
I think that's when you asked when you were like, "Hey, dude, I'm sorry. I know you're sleeping, but like, do you think you could make the fire?"
I was
Because
not
you're like,
sorry.
"I am so
I was
cold."
not good
Yeah,
at that
you're.
point, man.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. That's a terrible place to be. Like, you're cold, you're wet. It's you're in the woods
Yeah,
in the middle of the night. Like, your
that
brain is
was
probably
scary.
playing tricks on you. Yeah, absolutely. And I just remember like getting up and making the fire, and we were both like kind of shaking because it was chilly. It was really cold that night.
Yep. It got bad. I mean, on top of being wet, like that was the challenge, was just like it was rough. Um
Yeah.
but
But I mean, luckily, okay, so if you're bikepacking, one tip I have for you is to buy those Weber like fire starters. It's just a little
all those
block and you
blocks.
set the
Yeah, those are great.
yeah, yeah, you just light the paper around it on fire and it will create a fire in a rainstorm. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, well, also like be prepared for rain. The tarp, the emergency bivy, that was good. I mean, and
Oh yeah, I gave you the emergency bivy too. I forgot
and
about
make
that.
sure your tent is waterproofed.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I mean also too, I wish we would have spent a little bit well, I mean, I guess we couldn't in retrospect because it was raining and the rain was going to come anyway. But I'm like, oh, if we spent a little bit more time exploring around there, maybe we would have seen that cave. and we could have
Yep,
gotten in there sooner.
totally.
That's the only thing, but, like, I mean, we saw the scenery and we were like, "We gotta take this all in," and then the rain came, so
Yeah, that was
we're not at fault
I
here.
mean, I'm telling you, I think we did pretty good of, like, we stayed focused on, like, "Hey, you know what? We're a little bit behind here. We were kind of in a bad spot with that rainstorm that just, I mean, that was really torrential. Oh, and then after the rainstorm, like my buddy, like text message came through and he's like, "Yo, dude, I'm driving through Tennessee right now. It looks like there's some crazy rain heading towards you. Just want you to have a heads up." And it like had just poured on us for like 30 minutes. So I was like, "Thanks, man. Thanks for the heads up."
Yeah, what's the opposite of foreshadowing? Because that's what
Yeah,
happened.
like the text come through like, like 45 minutes later. I'm like, "Oh, man."
Yeah, you couldn't have texted us, like, 50 minutes
Well,
ago?
the cell
Yeah.
service was so crap. I think that was part of it.
Yeah, it was spotty until we got up to the top of the mountain, then I was, like, sending FaceTimes and texts and
Why didn't
everything.
I don't I don't know. I didn't have that, like, good luck.
And I remember too, like, because at the top of the mountain, there wasn't any place to get water. So and we didn't go so on the route, you can keep going past where the campsite is and go down the mountain, but you'll have to climb back up to go get water. There's a river down there. And so we didn't. So we were having to rely on the rain, like, we were putting out pots to catch water that
Yeah.
night so we could have water to
I
drink.
felt like, Kevin Costner in Waterworld where he, like, collecting water and he's, like, purifying it. Although we didn't, like, drink our own pee, but, you know?
Yeah, it was like Man versus Wild or Survivor Man, like, we were doing that to ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, we we really didn't need to make it that rough though, but, like, we were just
But also, I mean, it was in the middle of the night. We're not gonna walk down a trail and bike down to get water, like, you're
no,
just gonna
no,
tough it
no,
out.
no, no.
Luckily, it's all downhill the next day,
Yeah.
but still.
Yes. But yeah, that was, you know, n- not an ideal night, but the route and the campsite. I mean, I would do it again, obviously for a little
Oh,
bit of
yeah.
redemption, but obviously that view was unbelievable.
Yeah, I would love to go
And
back.
now that we obviously know a little bit more about that trail, there's more to be explored, and we could definitely like have a good time. Um,
I think I definitely went into it more with I don't exactly know how to say this, but, like, I went into it more with a cyclist mentality than a bike packer mentality, so to speak. Like, so, and I've talked to you about this and stuff, but bike packing to me is more like it's kind of like a van life mentality. Like, we'll get there when we get there. It's gonna be fun. We're gonna make it an adventure. We're gonna make it enjoyable. But like all we had were all I had was two cycling bottles on my bike. So I wish I would have thought about that more. Like, you had a Nalgene, so you could hold more water and stuff. I wish I hadn't have done the cycling bottles. I wish I would have done like Nalgene or a Hydro Flask or something,
oh yeah.
and just been a little bit more prepared in that realm of thinking about it. But I was like, I need to go light because we're going to be biking a lot, but also like 16 more ounces of water would have been way nicer.
Yeah, that's the things that you learn when you do it, and each route's going to be different too, because there are some where you don't need a water filter if you know that you're going to be biking through parks, but there are some where you need, more kitchen or more camp setup or more water filtration. So it's just, I mean, there's a lot of live and learn moments that happen in a bike packing trip.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so I can't think of anything else that went wrong or went right on day one. Day one was pretty much just us going up the mountain, getting torrential downpour, and then adapting to that.
And trying to survive. Yeah, like I said,
Yeah.
man, um, you making that fire at like 2 in the morning, that literally, I think you saved my life, Elijah. So thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I was honestly very worried about you because like you were shaking, and also too I was like, okay, if I mean, it's not out of the question to potentially get hypothermia. Like, even though it was in the summer, you're cold and you're wet. So like, and you were shaking. So I'm like, if he were to get bad off, I don't know what steps I would have taken to try to fix that.
Yeah, how
Like,
to, like,
do I leave you here and do I bike down to somewhere? Or do I try to call someone and just pinpoint our location and stay with you. But that's why I'm really happy that we got the fire going. We actually turned your tent into kind of a makeshift sleeping bag so you could sleep next to the
Yep,
fire.
my tent dried out because we hung it above the smoke. I mean, my stuff smelled like smoke for weeks, months afterwards. But I literally like basically stripped down, dried off with the fire, and then I climbed into that thing and I just passed out. And then whenever I woke up, I just literally shot up, and I think the first thing I said was, "I made it." And then
Yeah.
day 2 was amazing for us. We had such a good time. Like everything
Day 2 was
was
great.
dry, the route was great. It was sun was out. We had a
Yeah, we had coffee
blast.
on the parkway. Like, dude, it was so
Yeah.
awesome.
So I was pretty happy with us like having a great second day, and it didn't continue to rain, you know. That was rain is
But also too, I think like once you do something and just in life, like when you do something and it doesn't go your way and you're absolutely miserable, it makes for the best stories.
yeah, it's type 2 fun right there, man. Um
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, and but like I also think that there's a lesson in like reframing and, you know, shifting your mindset and just being like, okay, that sucked, but we're here now and we're not dead. So
Yeah,
let's
now
push
let's make the
on,
most of it.
and you know, we're prepared for this. So let's keep it going. And yeah, we had a wonderful second day and that worked out really well for us.
Yeah, there's nothing like a good cup of camp coffee in the morning to really kickstart a day.
Oh, that was nice. That really was nice.
Yeah, up on the rock face, just looking out over the valleys
Yeah.
again. It was pretty amazing. So then the second day, we left the campsite and then we went to get water, but then it was right back into climbing. We did
Yeah.
a lot more climbing on the second day.
We did actually. I mean, if you want, I can go over the profile of it. So again, the first day we did 11 miles with 2,000 feet of climbing. So that's a pretty sizable ratio. Um, and then the second day we did 25 miles with 2,100 feet of climbing. And
It felt like more, to be honest. And maybe that was just all the weight on the bike and just probably being tired from the night before.
yeah, I think
But like the
everything was
second
like
day felt like a
waterlogged a
lot
little bit
more.
too.
Yeah, exactly. Because I remember like after we got water leaving the campsite, it was immediately straight up. And then we got on the parkway and there was a decent climb there. And then we got to Grandmother Mountain and that was one of the steepest climbs I've ever done.
Yeah, the gradient on the backside of Grandfather was like some spots kicked up to like 20%. I remember we were like tacking it a little bit just to like conserve
We were
ourselves.
attacking it and yelling through it. I was yelling through it the entire time because I was like, I'm gonna walk this bike. And you're like, do not walk it,
Do
like
not.
keep going, finish it. Yeah. And I was like, I don't know if I can.
Well, I thought in my mindset at that point was like the worst is behind us because we made it off the mountain that the night before.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I
But
thought, I was like, man, all we have to do is just keep the pedals turning on this thing because that was a pretty wild little neighborhood that we were in. It was like a paved road that I mean it was straight up. It was like this.
and we had to keep zigzagging. Like it wasn't like the normal routes where you can just go up straight. Like you had to zigzag back and forth on the road to make it easier to climb.
Yeah, I wonder how cars even get up there in the wintertime, if at all.
Yeah, I'm sure they don't.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. But yeah, we did have a lot of elevation for a second day. I was actually surprised by that. I mean, in my mind, I felt like day one had all of it, but then you look at it on paper, I'm like, I don't know. Then again, like our job on day two was just to like wake up and like ride our bike. You know?
Yeah, and just get back to the car in the
Right.
most scenic way
So we
possible.
did, you know, we did that, and that's a fun thing about bike packing too. Like or like through hiking. Like your job is to just like just you got very few responsibilities. You just need to wake up, get on your bike, survive.
Yeah, and keep going again. I remember like the second day, there was the dog before we got to the Blue Ridge Parkway, and you bike past him, and he was fine.
He was so chill.
And then I bike past him, and then he just goes haywire and just starts chasing me. And I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah,
So
that was
then, of
so
course,
funny.
we're doing a full. I'm doing a full blown sprint to get away from this dog. Then we get on the parkway, have some coffee up there on the overlook, very scenic. And yeah, then we do that horrible climb. But the one part I remember of day two was that we cut the sleeves off of my shirt because I was so hot after doing that climb. I was like, I cannot wear this. So there's two old ladies walking up on us on this trail, and they just see a guy with his shirt off, cutting the sleeves off of his shirt, and they're like, what in the world is going on? Are we about to be attacked? Like, are they going to kidnap us or what's going to
Yeah,
happen?
they were worried. That was
Yeah, I
funny.
would be too. Yeah, if I saw someone, if I'm walking with my neighbor and a dog
In a gated
and I come
community
up,
where you're not expecting to see anybody else, there's probably a dozen homes in that neighborhood. And
yeah,
we could hear their voices and stuff, and I was like, "Oh, man, here we go."
yeah,
Uh,
there's two sketchy dudes. One has his shirt off
yeah,
and they're holding a knife cutting off sleeves.
they
Like,
look
what's
like
going to
gutter
happen?
punks, and,
Yeah.
who knows what's gonna happen. So when we saw them, we were, like, immediately, like, trying to, like, tell them things about ourselves to, like, disarm them.
Oh,
We're like,
yeah.
we live in Raleigh. We're both
I just got
just
married.
got
He's
yeah,
engaged. He's going to be
I'm
married.
like, Elijah's dad's a pastor. Like, we're normal people.
My social
Well,
security is, yeah.
we're like,
I live at this address. Yeah, it was really funny. But they were very supportive. They were I'm sure they didn't get pictures because they actually wanted this. One of the ladies was like, "Oh, can I get a picture of your setup so I can send it to my son?" I'm sure they got a
"You
picture
wanted
of
to
our setup in
file
case
a
anything
police
went
report,
wrong.
dude."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
that's
they
good
had me
times. But
fooled
yeah,
because they were really nice. They had a cute dog with them too, man. They were
oh, they were so nice.
yeah. And ironically, the reason why we stopped there too is because that was the highest point on the entire route out of the 2 days. That was the highest point because after that, it was all downhill. With
And that's when it really like the route into Pisgah that we started with from the parking lot and stuff, that was gravel and that was like still pretty low key. But once we peaked that and we started going downhill, and then that's when you really get into the backwoods type of trails.
hmm
That's when it really opened up and it was really fun.
yeah, and there was
And it,
well, it was a lot. It was kind of sketchy too because
yeah.
um, at that point we were 20 15, 20 miles away from the car. And the trail, I mean, this is when we got onto like the Yancey Ridge trail. The trail's pretty eroded. And you're basically like biking through like like on this rock slab where all the water has been like, just running like every rainstorm. So you have to really navigate through like roots that are sticking out or like rock, like sheer rock pieces. And I mean, I was getting in back of my mind. I was like, man, if one of us slashes a tire wall right now, we are trouble.
In a world of hurt,
Yeah,
yeah.
and actually,
Because
I think
you're a good mountain biker, and I don't mountain bike at all. And so you were like riding through some of this stuff, and I was like, I don't trust myself enough. And yeah, we're so far away. There's no cell service here. I'm gonna walk, and I did a lot of walking through some of
yeah,
Yancey Ridge and stuff because I'm
some
like,
of it you
there's some
definitely
just
have.
straight drop offs.
hmm And also, yeah, you start getting some speed going, and it's just really sketchy. The like I was worried. I mean, I think you got a stick caught in like a rear spoke or a rear derailleur at one point,
Oh yeah,
and
I got a
you like
stick stuck, and then the chain went between my cassette and the
that was it.
spokes,
You like
and
went
we
to a
couldn't get it
complete
out.
stop, and you were like, "Don't pedal." You were worried about like if you put too much torque on it, like because you don't,
Oh, just snap it, yeah.
man. You break a. I mean, I didn't. We didn't. I don't think uh, either of us brought derailleur hangers with us, but that would be wise
No,
for
but
the
I had a
next.
few quick links.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like when you do a trip like that, like you got to know like all the stuff you know for a normal ride, and then a little bit more because I mean, what if we had to turn one of those bikes in a single speed? Thankfully we were going downhill, but it's like um, you never know what can happen out there.
Yeah, you got to pick the right gear ratio.
Yeah,
But also, yeah, that's a good point. Like, if you're really going to go out there into kind of the unknown, you better know your setup and you better know what your bike is capable of. Because I knew, like, had I kept going and I put more torque on it, something would have broken, whether that be the chain,
Right.
derailleur tension, cables, whatever. Something was going to go wrong.
Yeah. And then thankfully, thanks to the comment thread on bikepacking.com, we actually were able to um, bypass like the really eroded stuff on the trail and take, I forget what road it was. It might have been Roseboro Road south. And that helped us out a lot. And it was a great road to go down because we were kind of like going along a river. The scenery was
It was very
super cool.
scenic. Yeah,
Uh,
and that one little overlook, like, you could look through the clouds and the trees and see everything again. And that's the only place that got cell service on the second day
yeah. So
until we got like back out of Pisgah.
oh yeah. So it was, excuse me. It was actually Edgemont Road. We actually rode through Edgemont along Wilson Creek, and that was just really fun, super scenic, um, really beautiful. And I mean, you could go really fast if you wanted to, but it was just nice to kind of like take it all in.
And then of course it rained again
It rained.
as we were on that trail. Yeah.
Yep, it rained
Like
again.
you I have the video of you where you're holding the tarp over you on the bike.
Yeah.
You're like leaned up against the
Yeah,
bushes.
I knew better. I learned my lesson. I wasn't gonna take anything off the bike the second day. I was just gonna get under the tarp. I put the tarp over two branches on top of me. I said, "I'm just gonna chill here. This is fine." And then when we got to Mortimer, do you remember that they just put fresh dirt on the
Oh
road?
yeah, it was so
So
soft.
it leveled out. It was like the grade was like, all it was basically a false flat kind of, and it was super soft. So we got lucky again where we didn't even have like a smooth like way to end it. We had to like fight through this like brand new soft dirt. It wasn't even gravel. It was just
Yeah, you're just drudging through it, like maxing your watts out just so you can go 13 miles per
it's
hour.
like fighting a headwind
Yeah, it's what it felt like,
or
but
biking through
worse.
fresh dirt.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was. Yeah, I forgot about that too.
But what
But man, I was so excited to see your truck.
Oh, me too. Yeah, that was great. I felt like we conquered it, and we did what we intended to do, and we handled everything that came our way. That was
And then we were gonna get real food. I think we got burritos.
Yeah, we went to Mountain Burritos in
Oh,
Morganton.
so good. Yeah, that was worth it. And I mean, that trip, that whole route too was I'm with you. I'm ready to do it again. And I want to kick it in the teeth
Yeah, I'd like a
because
little bit of redemption, probably a different tent as well.
absolutely. Well, now that you've done the route and now that we've done it, what would you have done differently besides the tent? Like, is there any gear setup, like different training you might have done, different fuel you would have taken?
Yeah, so I mean, I think since I don't go out to Pisgah too much, or as much as I'd like to, I maybe would have wanted to put a little bit more mileage on like the first day. I just think we were so like concerned about the logistics of like finding camp and getting set up. And granted, it worked out for us because we got up there and we were able to like set up camp before the rain started, regardless of like my tent situation. But now that we
And we
know,
were
like,
worried too that there was going to be other people up there.
yeah,
So we were like,
totally,
well, maybe we need to stake claim or something like that.
exactly, yeah. There's only like a couple spots up there that are good. But now that we know, like, there's that, you know, rock face, it was like that we could use to camp under. I mean, it'd be nice now that we know about that. It'd be nice just to know, like, hey, we could just set up over there.
Just go straight there. Yeah.
Yeah,
One of the next things I wanted to touch on was any tips you learned from this and definitely making things accessible. Like if you're riding and you need something, it needs to be where you can get it. You don't want to have to pull over, unclip, and then have to compress everything back in your seat post bag. So,
right.
besides that, what else did you learn on this trip?
Yeah, that was a big one. Obviously, just constantly moving stuff around to get. It's not like we were like biking and pulling stuff out. Like we weren't trying to do any like, education first, like alt race style, like, got like can't stop at all or anything like that. Um, but it was nice to like be efficient. And I think that's part of the fun about it too. You know, you're developing and constantly improving your setup. Um, I think the biggest thing that I can recommend to anybody is like if you live, you know, in an area like Raleigh Durham, like go to the next county over and go sleep in your friend's backyard for your first bike packing trip because something's
That's what I did.
yeah, right. So and it's fun because you're still getting a taste, but you're also getting the shakedown of what your setup needs to look like, and you kind of get a little bit of an understanding of like how things are going to work. Never make your maiden voyage for anything like in an extreme place like Pisgah, unless you're a complete madman.
I just
Person.
remember like so from Raleigh to Winston when I slept on my friend's front yard, the gear setup that I had on that first day compared to when we rode in Pisgah, which was like 3 days later or 4 days later, I felt like it was 100% different.
Oh
I felt like my whole layout because like
yeah,
certain things you wouldn't even think you would need,
right.
but then you would need them while you're riding, and I'm like, crud, where is that?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, so our setups changed so much along the way, but that's that like van life mentality. It's like you can make it as efficient as you want, or you can just dial it back as much as you want. Just whatever level of fun you want to have, that's the level of fun that you can have.
Totally, yeah. And I honestly, I think that's like why doing those like shakedown rides I really encourage them because it gives you more confidence and peace of mind. Like when you go into a place like Pisgah, because you've kind of already like smoothed out some of the kinks that can happen like in your own setup. Not to mention like those bikes were, 15 to 20 pounds heavier than normal. So when you look at a course profile, um, or a route profile, and you're like 2,000 feet of climbing, I got this. My day is to climb this mountain, right? But you're used to like 2,000 feet of climbing, like maybe on a different bike, maybe on a different
Yeah, on a 17-pound bike or something.
right on the road, or going to Umstead or something. So like it's way different.
Like talking to you now, I realize how much I relied on you and your equipment and navigating because I downloaded the file, but I never accessed it on my Garmin
Well,
because like
I drove my truck out to to see you at Wilson Creek because then our plan was I was gonna meet you and then we were gonna
yeah, we'd do the route and
then we're gonna drive.
we'd both
So
yeah, get back to
you
Raleigh.
had your own stuff to worry about for the 3 or 4 days before that, where you're just trying to navigate, you know, getting to Winston and Boone and stuff. So
Oh, that's true.
that's
But I was
teamwork,
like,
baby.
yeah, yeah, exactly. For the team, for the gram.
That's right.
But yeah, because like I on my profiles on my Garmin, I never mine has the capability of doing the navigation, but I've never used it. I like going onto Strava and I like looking at the routes and making my own routes. And I have like a bunch of handwritten notes where I'm like, okay, turn left, turn right, and I'll pull them out of my back pocket and look where to turn, but I never use the navigation because there's just something about I don't know. It's like feeling like a cowboy pretty much. Like I don't have technology. I just go out there and ride. I don't even have like the profiles where it tells me the heart rate. All I look at is time and distance.
Dude, I totally get that. And like, I mean, I wish I was like a better navigator than just being like, I know how to upload a GPX file. I mean, I do like study maps and stuff just because I think they're really fun and heat maps and stuff. But man,
Dude, you're the Strava route king
if you
though.
don't know how to read like the elevation profiles, like or the elevation lines on a map, like it can mess you up. Like,
Do you have any other tips or anything that you would give someone?
um, yeah, don't let this story deter you from not doing it. Like, we had a hell of a time out there, but
Yeah, even though like a lot of stuff went wrong, I would still do it a million times over.
Oh,
Like, it was
100%.
still so much fun.
Yeah, and I think that you know, this is a really cool aspect of cycling. I think a lot of people are doing it right now. And I think for good reason because it's kind of a mix of the all the elements that you love about being outside and being on your bike and figuring stuff out. And it's a cool thing to plan for. It's a cool thing to achieve. You feel really great. I mean, when we got to the end, I mean, it was almost emotional because you were like, "Dang, we were out there, man. We did it."
Yeah, we did it. We
Yeah.
did it for real.
Um,
Like, you see all these YouTube videos, and it's like, wow, we're capable of doing that too.
yeah, it's a ton of fun. So I would say to anybody listening, like, even though we're talking about being prepared and like, you know, having some bad luck happen and, not take it lightly and all that stuff. Yeah, all that's true. But also, like, you should go for it because you'll surprise yourself and you'll have a blast. And uh, you'll realize what you're capable of and it'll be a very memorable experience. So, just start within your means or start just briefly outside your means and then just keep building on it. And that's just, you know, like the first time you got on a bike, you didn't do 100 miles. You biked 5. And then the next day you were better and you biked 6 or 7. And then you got to 10 to 15, turned into 20, 50 metric century, and you keep building on it. That's what bike packing is, just a couple more layers on top of all that.
All right. Well, thank you, Matt, for joining us today. It was very fun to relive the trip. I forgot a lot of aspects about it. So thank you for refreshing my memory. And for everyone, we'll put a bunch of links in the description so you can check out the route on bikepacking.com. You can see some pictures, and there's even a YouTube video out there. So go check it out. And like Matt was saying, just get out there and go for it. Just try it out, test it out, see if you like it. And if you don't, someone will buy your gear off of you. But yeah, so thank you, Matt, for being here. And thanks for checking out the podcast.
Thank you, Elijah. It's been a pleasure, man. It's been super fun. I really enjoyed talking about this.
Absolutely. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.